testing. Oh, okay. That's so weird. My mic wasn't working. I am really happy somebody said stuff about not being able to hear anything. All the first comments were in fact that nobody could hear me, but here I am. No, what I was saying was I'm kind of sad that all of these technical difficulties have been happening today, because I was actually in the mood to live stream today. Like, I was in like a good mood and I had energy and I was ready to sit down, and then all this stuff is happening. So I'll just tell you ahead of time that if it does it again, I'll probably just stop the live stream for this evening, because that's kind of a pain in the ass to keep doing this. But, anyway, in the meantime, the connection says excellent. So looks good. Anyway, we have returned. We are back. Somebody said, I think Cooperation Tulsa should start an ISP. Yeah, I mean, we've thought about like helping to start a mesh network. Knowledge and Defense says, would you disagree that the origin, the cause for the initial creation and financial perpetuation of bigotry is mostly the result of wanting to divide and conquer the bottom 99% of working masses? It certainly has been exacerbated by that, but bigotry predates like capitalism, for example. Like not necessarily nationalism, but like ethnic pride and people's pride over their city and all of that predates the existence of capitalism. So I don't think it's exactly just that those things just came from that, but it's absolutely the case that those things are weaponized by existing hierarchical power structures within the economy. No doubt about that. And within the state as well. But it's not like those would just go away if we got rid of capitalism in the state. Oh my God, am I lagging again? It says excellent, but then I saw myself like freezing. Anyway, well, we'll see how this goes, everyone. Oh no, I see myself lagging on the preview. This is so frustrating. Very frustrating, very frustrating. Oh, you said I'm talking about the ruling class, not just in capitalism. Maybe. Probably to some degree, but I think that it does kind of arise organically sometimes. Some people just do in-group, out-group thinking, and then that makes people more likely to hold bigoted opinions. And then hierarchical power structures exacerbate those, and then build social structures of enforcement for those what would just be interpersonal bigotries or bad opinions. They're useful for hierarchical power structures. Matthias Baker says, has there been any anti-ICE organizing efforts in Tulsa? Yes, that's all I will say. Freestyle Skate says, campism is a threat to the emancipation of humanity. Absolutely agreed. 100%. Somebody asked if I rebooted the PC. Yes. Yes, I rebooted the PC. That's probably why the mic wasn't working, actually. Frosty said, currently trying to make a clip out of the don't call for general strikes on a whim and share it on the GSUS Discord. Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. Yeah. The Real Master says, frames may be dropping, but audio hasn't had any issues the whole evening. So I say just roll with it at this point. Yeah, that's probably true. I'll probably just go until I get done and get tired or whatever. But if it really starts like chugging like that, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, it looks good for now. I'm super glad that like 50 people just sprung back and immediately jumped in stream. That's pretty good. Still didn't get back like the other 24 people that were in here. Knowledge and Defense says, is it unironically possible that you're being intentionally sabotaged here? Yes, it is unironically possible, but there's no like evidence to believe that it's the case. So it's probably just that my internet is not being very good. It's super cold outside here in Tulsa. A bunch of snow has fallen in the last like 4 or 5 days. So more likely I'm just really using up a lot of bandwidth and something is wrong, with the lines. But is it possible? 100%. Yeah, totally. No doubt about that. However, is it likely? I don't think so. Probably not. It is weird though. It is really weird because, the rest of the day, my connection's been fine. I have not been having any issues connecting to anything or browsing the internet. Tomas says, Bad Empanada was complaining about the ICE protesters that wear costumes. I mean, sure. I mean, I guess I could see that, but Bad Empanada doesn't really have any room to talk, given that he doesn't do anything, has never organized anything. As far as I can tell, hasn't really ever attended any protests. He has no idea how organizing works. He doesn't understand how a revolution is built. He doesn't understand how anything changes in society. Bad Empanada is just an armchair commentator who pretends that he is some kind of revolutionary. He isn't. He really should not be as respected as he is in the community. He's kind of a loser and is extremely annoying, aggressive, and is essentially a wrecker in leftist spaces. He just wants to exploit the spectacle for his own gain, and I don't really think that he has any strong principled positions. Somebody said, how relevant is the Epstein case? I mean, it's extremely relevant insofar as it shows us what is going on behind closed doors in our government, right? Like, it shows you how rotten the U.S. empire is. It's like, I got to be honest, when I was younger, what I would say is like, I don't believe in evil. Everybody has reasons why they are the way they are and all that. Honestly, after seeing the way that these people act behind closed doors, no, I think that's evil, or that's as close as you can get to something being evil. These people are more evil than most of the villains in our fiction stories. I mean, like, you have like Trump collaborating with Epstein to sex traffic young girls and boys. And we have all of this evidence of all of the disgusting shit that they're doing to them. And then today we get a leak confirming, as everybody suspected, that Trump was forcing sex with little girls. And then, we have the testimony of Sasha Riley as well, that Sasha Riley's allegations are way darker than the stuff that we've seen so far, even in the Epstein files. And it makes sense that this is what it looks like with the redactions. Everything that we've seen in the files that seems really bad, this is what it looks like without or with the redactions. If the redactions were taken out, it's clear that Trump would be deeply implicated as essentially being Epstein's partner in crime in an international pedophile sex trafficking cabal that was attempting to blackmail U.S. leaders and other world leaders. And it's disgusting that it worked, and it's even more disgusting that he is getting away with it. And he is our Hitler. Our Hitler, in addition, is also a pedophile sex trafficker. Incredible stuff. This is where we're at in the modern era. Isn't this incredible? Great. It's great. Great stuff. Anyway, I'm actually writing like a short video script about like, how does the left respond to the existence of conspiracies existing and being true? Not as like this, like, well, maybe not, maybe it is. The evidence points in no, like, Now we do know that there was or maybe even is a secret sex trafficking or a secret pedophile sex trafficking cabal behind our government. I mean, not trying to get angry at you, but that seems relevant to me personally, gotta say. I mean, I'm not going to get deep into these conspiracy theories, but unfortunately, the rabbit hole goes pretty deep on this one, and the implications don't get better as you learn more. It's pretty fucking dark. Incredibly dark. Yeah, somebody says QAnon was right, but it turns out their boy is the number one predator. Exactly. I was telling somebody the other day, I think it's possible that QAnon, and I'm just making shit up right now. This is pure speculation, but it seems possible to me that QAnon was the Trump campaign trying to get out ahead of the fact that he was the pedophile sex trafficker and trying to create a narrative before the narrative came out, like a way to manicure the narrative and to focus it on other people than Trump so that Trump would not be implicated and the attention would be elsewhere. But that's just speculation, just speculation. A donation from Ash Kitty for $10. I appreciate you. Says, will you ever do a video about how anarchists would build cities or streets? My girlfriend is super into urbanism and trains, and I've been wanting to look into it from an anarchist perspective. I would consider it. That's not like an area of expertise for me. I could probably come up with some answers and some explanations and some suggestions, but that's not my area of expertise. So I would only be able to kind of speculate and ideate in a way that y'all might find interesting and in a way that I find plausible. But, it would be coming from a place where I don't have that kind of background. So it would be mostly just what I would be thinking about the situation. Like if I'm trying to figure out what it would kind of look like, what it would look like. But, that is an interesting topic for a video. So maybe I would consider it for sure. Yes, Thomas says, Alex Jones is just a talking head for Trump. So much for conspiracy theories. Exactly. Yeah, another case of every accusation is a confession for the right wing, for sure. QAnon was maybe the second part, I don't know, but this person thinks that QAnon was a Mossad psyop and that 4chan is a honeypot. Maybe. It's possible. Somebody thinks, CC Femboy says Q is Epstein. Maybe, I guess. I haven't looked in to see if that makes any sense, but maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think the craziest thing about the right-wingers being conspiracy theorists is they're like trying to figure out all these conspiracies and most of the time they're wrong. And then the one time that they're right, it turns out that their people are all of the worst offenders. It's like, yeah, wow, you really discovered a conspiracy theory. And then it turned out that your people are the ones that are carrying out the pedophile sex trafficking cabal. Wow. Good job, y'all. Probably should practice some introspection about why your people are the ones that are the most important in the pedophile sex trafficking cabal. Incredible stuff. Incredible. Sund says, such a shame, dude. Wasn't 4chan like super anarchist coded back in the day? At least somewhat anarchist coded. It had everything back in the day. That's what I would explain to people. That's how I usually been explaining it to people. It used to just be everything. Right? It wasn't like any one thing. It was like, yeah, anarchists, yeah, there were communists and fascists and just regular people and right-wingers, who were just like libertarians and all that stuff. Like that was all just there at that point. Oh my gosh. Did my internet just crash? It tells me there's no data coming through. Anyway. Oh, there we go. Fixed. But what happened was a huge wave of fascists came onto the board, and slowly all of the non-fascists began to migrate off of 4chan. And the only time that anybody went back was just to talk shit on fascists. And maybe you're right to say that that was them manicuring it as a honeypot. But my impression was that happened because the Stormfront forums decided that they just were going to migrate over to 4chan and make that their new posting spot. CIA tampering with Dan's Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's what's going on here. That's what's going on. See, that's how I should reassure myself. Yeah, if anything in my life doesn't go right, it's because the CIA is trying to sabotage me. There's no responsibility. It's the CIA. I will say there's a lot of conspiracy theories going around right now, and I just want to caution y'all that just because the Epstein, Trump, pedophile sex trafficking cabal is real, that doesn't mean that every conspiracy is real. You know, like, we all know that there's some weird shit going on with Erica Kirk. She seems like very placid about this whole thing. And then so people spread this video of Erica Kirk giving like a talk in front of like a present, you know, I don't know, a presentation. She's giving like a presentation. And then they said that this was from a CIA video. But then I went and did more research, and it's not. It's just from a documentary. She was like a paid actress in this documentary, essentially laying out the thesis of the documentary. So that video is not of her giving a talk in front of the CIA. And don't get me wrong, that would like fit right in with a lot of our preconceptions. And maybe she is an asset. Who knows? But the video getting passed around of her giving that lecture is not evidence of her being an asset. That's from a documentary. As far as like connections of Jeffrey Epstein with Israel, that's not speculation. Epstein is connected with Mossad. We know Epstein's connected with Mossad through both Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, but also there's some evidence that he was in the know about Israel's internal operations. And it all seems pretty verified at this point. That doesn't mean that I think that he was playing like agent for all of the intelligence agencies. He was like just acting as an asset. So he was basically like blackmailing powerful people by giving them access to underage girls and boys. And then he used that as blackmail material in order to get them to give him large sums of money. Then that meant that he developed a sort of like ring of trust with a bunch of other very dark conspirators through the pedophile blackmail ring. He used it in order to groom people to be his allies, people that he just wanted to shut the fuck up. He used their predilections against them, and people who he couldn't trust. Unless he had something against them, they used it to give each other blackmail material so that they could trust each other, because they would shake hands and say, you know what happens if you don't do what we said, you know what I have on you, so we can trust each other. I think it's a way for like deeply selfish and awful and dark-hearted people to be able to trust one another. They create blackmail material, they give it to one another and say, cool, if I don't do what I said I was going to do, you can release this. And, yeah, so I think that's a big part of it. And then I think that as it developed, Jeffrey Epstein created such a ring of people involved in this blackmail conspiracy, and he was doing such a prolific amount of pedophile sex trafficking, that he became an asset to the CIA and Mossad, and probably others, to be honest. And he used this blackmail material and his ring in order to provide blackmail material to these entities who are trying to, maintain certain geopolitical realities, trying to make sure that people do or do not pass certain laws. They probably were using all of this behind the scenes to put pressure on people. that's definitely part of it. And Trump got involved because Trump is just as much of a piece of shit as Jeffrey Epstein is. Like, Trump and Jeffrey Epstein really aren't very different as people. In fact, the more you learn about Trump, the more you realize that that kind of stuff is just not at all outside his wheelhouse. If you learn about his connection to Roy Cohn, this guy Roy Cohn, he was an attorney back when Trump was young. I think Trump would have met him in his 30s or something. And this guy Roy Cohn got his start under the I think it's the Attorney General prosecuting the Rosenbergs, who were communists back in the the 1900s. I don't remember exactly what years it was. They were caught and they were tried for treason, and then he's the one who pushed for them to be executed. He went on to live a life of treachery, essentially. Roy Cohn then went on to become like a fixer. He left kind of his legal practice and became a fixer for rich people in the state of New York, in New York City and New York more broadly. He met Trump when Trump was still kind of fresh, and he taught Trump all of his sort of treacherous ways of blackmailing people and undermining processes that were going to work against him. If you want to see a movie that's a dramatization of this story, you should go watch The Apprentice. It's about the relationship between Donald Trump and Roy Cohn, and I think it gives a very good background to understand what kind of person Trump is. Trump was more evil than Roy Cohn by the end of his life. And so then him becoming friends with Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, it's kind of just a bygone conclusion. These are all the same sorts of people. They're deeply disgusting people who really don't care about anyone else. They only care about their own empowerment. They'll get it any way conceivably possible, and nothing is going to stand in their way in doing that. Anything you can imagine, they would do. We have Sasha Riley is somebody who claims that they were in the pedophile ring, the sex trafficking ring. Sasha was bought as a child and then trafficked into the ring at a very young age and was groomed. And Sasha Riley has given us an enormous tell-all confession about all of this, because the state will not actually interview Sasha for evidence. They are essentially ignoring Sasha Riley, and Sasha Riley, all the information about Sasha Riley has been being erased from the internet. It's really hard to even find anything about it, but it's out there, and what you'll find when you read into it is fucking terrifying, to be honest. It's pretty horrifying. It's worse than you think. It includes snuff films and trafficking all kinds of children to all kinds of different things from all over the place. It's really, 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 really dark stuff. So anyway, that's where we're at. So you asked me how I feel about the Epstein stuff, and is it important? I mean, given everything I just said, I'll let you determine if you think it's important. Let's see here. Flinner says, from your knowledge, are LaRouchites basically red, brown, and fascist? Yeah, that's my impression. LaRouchites are basically a red-brown tendency. It is a bridge from red to brown. So it's a bridge from the authoritarian left to fascism. So you're the ACP is another one of these. There's these various, you know how I talked about how authoritarian leftists try to turn groups in the leftist social movement into feeder groups. So what they try to do is they take the group and then they want all those groups' members to join their authoritarian left group. Well, the right wing, these sort of quasi right left fascistic figures also do the same thing with the authoritarian left. So they dupe the authoritarian left with things like campism and economic reductionism and, the anti-imperialism of fools. So you're taking side of between imperialist entities. And then they use this to slowly degrade their principles, and they move them towards fascism over time. And you see this with the authoritarian left for some reason having this very sort of been relationship with Alexander Dugin, even though Alexander Dugin is a fascist and praises Hitler in his works, but they don't care. because they have degraded all of their morals and principles. So like ACP, that's a red-brown feeder group. It's funneling people into fascism. Lots of authoritarian left groups, as you say, LaRoucheites and people that are born from the whole LaRouche tendency. That's a red-brown pipeline. This is actually a very prolific thing in the authoritarian left these days, and lots of them are falling victim to it. Jokey Pie says, it's really tough being born into a world where the bad guys have already won. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it worse, but the bad guys won like 8,000 years ago. Our job is to build something that can make the good guys win. We have to build the structure from the bottom up. We have to be serious, deadly serious about building these structures from the bottom up that are able to subvert and overturn this mega machine that they have built. It must be destroyed, but before it can be destroyed, we have to begin learning to live in our alternatives. And that's where the hope is. The hope is in action. Choselist says, opinion on the new chairman of the Black Panthers. I've seen he's been getting some traction on social media, and I'm very suspicious. There's a bunch of Black Panther groups these days. I don't know which one. That means that for that reason, I don't actually know which one you're referring to. There's actually been two different people who are leaders of the Black Panthers who have ended up in the news for different reasons, saying different things. So I don't know which one you're referring to. Falling Space says, have you seen or read anything on Brazilian anarchists? Yes, that's where I get my primary, I call myself an specificist. So I'm an specificist anarchist. So that I've read lots of stuff by Farge and retrospectives on FAU, and I read releases by OSL a lot. Big fan of Felipe Correa. See, what all did I miss up here? Just looking back, somebody goes, not a third try, sobbing emoji. Real. This one's going good so far, though. I mean, I shouldn't say that, it's a bad idea, but. Jokey Pie says, so have you been participating in the militant kindergarten thing, or have you? It would be cool to have your voice in those. I've not, but I would do so in the future. At the moment, I'm very, very busy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'd be very down. Very, very down for that. It's LMPs. Says, joining weeks after completing your playlist, The State is Counter-Revolutionary. Wanted to let you know that I greatly appreciate the work. Gave me the push into becoming a baby anarchist. I'm so happy to hear that. That video series seems to be the one that's had some of the most impact of anything on this channel. I should probably consider like republishing it all as one big video essay and like trying to like re-record a lot of the segments and everything. It was that single video essay, or that 4-part essay, has had a lot of impact. I'm thinking about trying to turn it into a manuscript and try to get it published. Actually, I would expand it, but yeah, no, I'm thinking about trying to get that one published probably. James Bishop says, what media would you recommend for following current events surrounding ICE and more generally activist movements and their repression in the United States from abroad? I'm sad to tell you that the best source still seems to be Twitter. It's a hellscape, but if you just follow leftists, it might be quite a bit more tolerable. Just block every fucking fascist on there and just follow a bunch of leftists and journalists on Twitter, and you'll be pretty in the loop. Ash Kitty, I think I might have seen your one above that was about like a decentralized planned economy. I think a decentralized planned economy is feasible, but it's going to require technology. It's certainly not something that can be done with pencil and paper. We're going to need systems to be developed, which will allow us to do a decentralized economy. So I think we probably need to be looking in the direction of like Stafford Beer, CyberSyn in Chile is probably a good thing for us to learn from, even if we don't want to implement that directly. There's been numerous sort of decentralized planned systems. There's also Paracon, participatory economics. That one has some promise for sure. So yeah. Flinner says, do you think many liberals are worse than MAGA fascists since liberals are way more intelligent and educated, yet are only marginally more progressive and just want fascism with a rainbow flag? I think they're more dangerous sometimes. I think that it's scary because liberals are way better at managing fascism. Okay, so liberals will slowly turn the dial towards fascism, but they don't do so in a way that it's overt. So that means that people will like sleep through the process as they're like slowly boiled. It's like the frog being slowly boiled. So liberals are actually like way better at managing the fascist order. Fascists themselves are too overt. They're just like too focused around domination. They have caveman brains and they just want to wreck everything as they go so fast, just trying to put in place their fascistic reactionary ideals that it wrecks everything and everything just gets destroyed in the process. So like they're both bad in different ways. I think fascism is probably more terrifying and damaging short term, but I think that if liberalism maintains power, it's slowly going to boil the whole fucking planet, and fascism is going to quickly boil the whole fucking planet. So it's like, that's up to you to decide, I guess. I think fascism is worse because it harms more people. I think liberalism is worse in the sense that it is more stable, and so people will just go about their lives and not even rebel against it while it destroys everything. So fascism at least elicits a response. People strike back. Whereas under liberalism, people are just like, go to sleep and let them put fascism in place, but with rainbow flags. So it's pretty dangerous either way. I think this is why the system inherently leads towards fascism, is because the liberals are putting in place all the tools for fascism to begin with. And then when the actual overt fascists step into place, it's just like, oh yeah, thanks for all the tools of fascism. I mean, I'm definitely going to use these. It's pretty bad. I'm not an accelerationist. I'll be very clear. I don't want things to go faster. I want to be clear that there are ups and downs to both directions, but I do think that overt fascism probably still is worse overall. The one and only Teaster says, also, or I guess I missed the first part. Meaningful ends unity along with your and other anarchist critiques and the analyses of the state as counter-revolutionary gave me great respect and interest in anarchism. Also, your recommendation to read and read about an anarchist program made me an anarchist. Oh, and the short about it. Awesome. That's awesome. I'm super glad to hear that. That's fantastic. Thoughts on effective altruism? Quite clearly, it is a way for like a billionaire techno-fascists to justify all of their fascistic programs as altruism. It's them trying to justify that they are altruistic, that these are not utilitarian, domineering systems of planning, but instead we're trying to help everyone out. I don't know if y'all have heard about Tescrial. Have you ever heard of Tescrial? I'm going to put Tescrial. There we go. There we go. It's in the chat. Tescrial. I'm going to look it up. I'll tell you what it stands for. It's an abbreviation for a bunch of different things. They are transhumanism, extropianism, which means like evolving towards improving the human condition, trying to extend human life, singularitarianism, believing that there's going to be a tech singularity, cosmism, rationalism, the internet community, that is to say, not like the actual philosophical concept of rationalism, effective altruism, and long-termism. This is the sort of like combined ideology of our fascistic tech overlords like Elon Musk and maybe less so Jeff Bezos, but like, you know, Mark Andreessen and Peter Thiel. This is a description of those people here. It ends up very quickly moving towards eugenics, and it's basically a techno-fascism is what it is. So, you know, effective altruism is like one pillar of this techno-fascist dystopia that people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel want to impose on humanity. Medium Format says, could you describe the difference between council communism as described by someone like Anton Pannekoek and anarchism? Why do you adhere to an anarchist framework over a libertarian Marxist one? I would say that council communism is like anarcho-syndicalism in specific. Council communism, I wouldn't say is necessarily like identical to anarchism as a whole. Anarchism is a bunch of different tendencies, all thinking different things. Whereas council communism, because it's like anarcho-syndicalism, tends to have mostly a focus on economics. And the way I look at it is the focus should be on hierarchical power structures. So I'm an anarchist because anarchism has a more complete critique of hierarchical power, whereas council communism is really a more narrow solution for economic hierarchical power. Victorious Gardenosaur says, sake or soju? I've only ever had like a shot of soju, and it was okay. I think I like the rice wine flavor of sake, but I'd have to try more soju to know whether I prefer sake or soju. Aren't council comms anti-union? I mean, yes, they want to build like workers' councils, but when you actually look at the substance of these workers' councils, they end up being very much just like an anarcho-syndicalist's horizontal unions that they want to build. So, yeah, they're against the traditional union, but the way that an anarchist builds the unions ends up looking a lot like a workers' council. Steve McNelly donated $10, look at maybe 10 Australian dollars, says, hey Dan, what was the economic model you've mentioned you liked before that wasn't Marxist? I forgot to write it down. Okay, so I don't like, I should just preface by saying I don't like adhere to like any one specific economic model. I think they all have like kind of like some valuable contributions, but I think capital as power is probably what you're thinking of. But I'm also interested in, even if I'm not like a, once again, not like a full adherent to participatory economics. And I'm also interested in cyber sin. And yeah, no, I mean, I think these are all really interesting. I think that probably some combination of these is probably a good way to understand both the economy as it stands and perhaps a reconstruction of the economy. Hey, you know what? I'm pretty happy. We've had 3 live streams tonight, and somehow we're on live stream number 3, and we actually got up to 94 concurrent viewers, so we're doing pretty good. I mean, my view, somebody said every model is wrong, some are useful. Yes. But the way I look at it is just that, like, economics is not a solved discipline. Okay? Economics is not like physics. Economics is not like mathematics. Economics, not to say mathematics or physics are solved, but like economics is essentially just sociology and then applied to the circumstances of economics. And then they have a bunch of math that models the tendency of how capital moves within society, but it is not like a hard science. It is more of a soft science than it is a hard science. This is not to insult anybody doing economics, just a point. And so with that in mind, I don't like adhere super strictly to any of these perspectives. I think they all have valuable things to offer. And I think that I tend most towards like capitalist power. And I also value Marx's labor theory of value and the broader Marxist economic framework. I think it has a lot of value as well. And then like cyber sin might be a good way to do decentralized planning, as well as possibly participatory economics in some sort of period of transition. These provide valuable mechanisms for understanding how the economy works and how the economy might be decentrally planned. Okay. So let's see. Where did this start here? So this guy says that I demonize people with BPD and ASPD and narcissism all the time. Not true. What I did do was at one point had a conversation with people about how these have negative tendencies associated with them. And I talked about how BPD was actually treatable. And I did speak very bluntly and without good consideration on Twitter. A bunch of people got very angry at me about it. And then I clarified my opinion, and all those people who were angry with me just ignored the clarifications and read bad intent into all of my clarifications, which also included an apology for being overly broad in my assessment and making statements that were too broad, that didn't contain enough nuance. And everybody who wanted to hate me from that situation just ignored the apology and ignored that statement and ignored me clarifying my meaning. And I don't know what your place in that is. I don't know if you were one of those original people that read all of that bad faith into my perspectives, whether you have just been misinformed by people who are just kind of spreading the rumors around. But the way I look at it is, I don't really care what your diagnosis is. I care about how you act. And I don't really care how that came about. Like, if you act as a good person in the world, that's all I really care about. So take that as you will. Also, it's weird that people keep bringing up BPD in that, because even in the original statements I made, I was like pretty clear that BPD is the most treatable of those personality disorders. So really weird. Anyway, basically by the end, all I was telling people was, I want you to get therapy. Please consider dialectical behavioral therapy or EMDR. These are very effective. And then people got angry at me for suggesting therapy. So yeah, I don't think that I don't think you're presenting what took place accurately. Undelig Muffins. Undelig Muffins says, I just read State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin. Have you read his book? Or have you read this book? And what are your thoughts on it? Yeah, I read it years ago. And I found myself sort of confused as to what Lenin was doing in the book, because it doesn't really match any of his opinions from beforehand. And it certainly doesn't match any of his actions immediately after he publishes the book. So I read it as Lenin sort of trying to pivot to have views that match the social movement more closely, trying to customize his ideology to match the social movement. Even though I don't think he held a lot of those opinions about like how that socialism would function and how the workers would have control and how the militias would be the army, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't do any of the things he said. Everything he said in State and Revolution about how socialism would be managed, he did not do. So I think that there's some sense, in my mind, at least, I think Lenin was being an opportunist. He was essentially like, oh, the views I was holding are not popular, but I need to kind of insert myself into the social movement. But here's the interesting thing. State and Revolution was not released until after the revolution. So State and Revolution was not at all influential on the movement. It was published afterwards. And so, yeah, it was written before, but it was published afterwards. And so, yeah, State and Revolution, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad if they like it, I'm glad they like it because it has a lot of very libertarian socialist things in there, but it also has a lot of stuff that's very like opportunist and counter-revolutionary mixed in with it. And I don't think that Lenin's readings of Marx and Engels are very good readings. I don't think that his conception of socialism as a transition period has any like kind of textual backing to it. And I think Lenin himself is sort of in violation of most of Marx and Engels' criticisms of the movement at the time. Lenin really represented like Lassalle and Blanqui more than Marx and Engels in the movement. But it doesn't matter, you know? Doesn't matter. Jackalope donated $5 and he said, thoughts on people waving around Zoran as proof electoralism works? I guess maybe I'm in different spaces. I haven't seen a lot of people doing that. I'm sure some people are doing that, but in my experience, maybe it's just because I'm like mostly following like anarchists and stuff, but I don't see people saying like it means that electoralism works. So I'd have to engage with them. I'd have to talk with them about that subject, but I haven't even seen what arguments they're making. I mean, I guess if they're excited about Zoran Mamdani being mayor, it's understandable. It's certainly better than Cuomo being mayor, but I hope it does not encourage people to put all of their efforts into electoralism when what we really need is people putting all of their efforts into the social movement. Java, I'll just say, here's a genuine question. How do you deal with abusive people and anarchist movements in a way that isn't punitive? I mean, the answer to that is restorative justice. Like you have to have a system, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but you have to have a system where your priorities are, number one, repairing the harm that has been done, and number two, preventing further harm from being done. That has to be priority number one. And unfortunately, the movement tends to kind of treat people as being very disposable. Like as soon as there's any feeling that they've done something wrong, we just want to throw them away and be done with them. Like a lot of the people that you were talking about that, you know, talked a bunch of shit and spread a bunch of, distortions about me. They just wanted to dispose of me. But like, I'm here for the long haul. I'm in this for the rest of my life. I'm not going anywhere. And what was really needed was mediation, and what was really needed was calm, reflective discussions, and that's just not what came out of it. But that's what it looks like for us to fix those problems in the movement. It's very difficult to get people who are very upset with each other to sit down with the mediator and have a calm, reflective discussion, but it's absolutely necessary. And so I look at like the Zapatistas justice system as a good model. The Zapatista justice system is a restorative system, and it isn't a system where they are like punitive. Their first step is always just trying to understand the content of the situation. They're trying to get the person to sit down in front of elders. They're trying to get them to sit down with the person they harmed. The person they harmed is giving a description of the harm that was caused so that they can try to understand what repairing that harm would look like. And then they develop together a path forward about what would prevent this from happening in the future. And really, most of the time, that doesn't really require anything super punitive. It requires things like getting therapy. If you did something bad and you hurt somebody else, well, there's probably a reason for that. Like, was it that you have like poor emotional regulation and you flew off the handle? Is it that you are kind of were you being like greedy and hateful? Well, that's a different kind of category. But you have to go about trying to figure out what it looks like to restore that person's position in the community. I was very influenced by indigenous views of justice. And when I was reading most of these indigenous conceptions of justice, what they felt was they were not eager to kick somebody out of the community for doing something wrong. Instead, the way they looked at it was that the person's absence was a wound to the community. That person leaving was a wound to everybody there, to the collectivity. It was a damage to their solidarity together. And that what they wanted to do was not kick that person out and be done with them because they were frustrated, but instead they wanted to find ways to bring them back in. They weren't trying to push them out of the circle. They were trying to pull them back into the circle with kindness and understanding and patience. And I think that is what it requires for us to have a healthy movement. And that's what a future society will require us of us as well. So when we as a community model these sort of like punitive behaviors of treating human beings as if they're disposable, or once again, returning to our previous subject, when people say something we don't like or something that we perhaps read bad intent into, and we fly off the handle and just treat that person as disposable and kick them out of the community, that's a really unhealthy thing for us to prefigure, because that is not what our future society can look like. Our future society will not function if that's the behavior we practice in that future society. We have to, starting now, practice and prefigure healthier forms of justice, transformative or restorative or rehabilitative justice, whatever you want to call it, right? That has to be practiced in the here and now. So that's my perspective. Java says, my point is that one of the people who went after you ended up being an abuser. How would she be dealt with in your ideal anarchist model, for example? Kind of like I just explained, to be honest. Yeah, like I just explained. That's not good, but we also need to have a process by which we repair our social wounds rather than just kind of like chopping off the infected limb. We try to disinfect the limb first, like... And the person you're talking about, I'm really not going to go into this deeply, but that person was deeply harmful to the community well before that was noticed, by the way. That person had been recognized as causing problems and being like a wrecker and being cruel to other people and exploiting drama way before anybody found that out. And that stuff should be dealt with way earlier in the process, way before a person does some big bad thing that makes us want to toss them out. Early in the process of them demonstrating bad behavior, we need to be intervening and once again, intervening with kindness and patience and a desire to repair the social wound well before that happens. And the community's like deeply punitive right now, and that's unhealthy, and that cannot stand. That's not prefigurative, or it's prefigurative of hierarchical structures. It's a reproduction of the hierarchical mechanism. So the way I look at it is you use what I would call escalating sanctions. You start with the lowest severity possible. And then only once it's demonstrated that the least severity works, you move to the next severity, right? So like exile, I consider that pretty high severity. First you start with mediation and intervention, and then you start with therapy, and then, after you've escalated, you end up at something like exile, right? Like that's very intense, but our community's default to exile as being like one of the first things they do. Oh, we're upset at that person. We're angry at that person. Exile, split. Like that's never going to work. That's prefiguring a failing system. Ungesund says that's why I constantly tell people police don't prevent crime. They show up after it happens. That's absolutely the case. No doubt about that. Medium Format says, thanks for the Q&A. Do you see the proliferation of AI as a threat to direct democratic structures? That is, if we lived in a world where we governed ourselves with direct democracy. Well, it's hard to say because the way that it's currently structured, if the way it's currently structured were the way it was structured in a democratic society, well, yeah, obviously that would be destructive, right? I mean, the way it's currently structured is deeply, deeply parasitic and damaging to society. But I don't think that LLMs like have to be these deeply damaging and parasitic things. I think that if they were integrated in a libertarian socialist society where power was at the bottom, I think that there would be like prudent regulation on the use of AI or rather LLMs more broadly. And LLMs wouldn't be nearly as bad in that society. They would probably have a bunch of liberatory uses in that context. But in our context, there are some liberatory uses, but there's also so many negative uses in this current society. And as with every advancement, it is weaponized by the prevailing hierarchical power structures in order to turn it into a source for damage. And AI is definitely in this current structure being used, or LLMs in this current structure are being used to do prolific damage to the social fabric, to social structures, to really our ability to discern truth from fiction. Like that's one of the worst parts about it. It's undermining people's ability to think and do intellectual tasks. And yeah, I mean, that's disturbing. Very disturbing. Blue Balon says, wait, isn't exile just passing on the problem to another community? That's exactly been my critique of people who look to exile to solve problems. There's so many times where I hear an anarchist, there's so many times I hear an anarchist being asked where they're like, how do you deal with these bad people, right? And then like, often the anarchist will be like, exile them. And it's like, okay, somebody just gave you an example of a serial killer and you said exile the serial killer. Like that's a wild answer. So your problem is just that the serial killer is killing you. You don't mind if it kills somebody else, if they kill somebody else. Right. Yeah, that's a terrible answer. Exile is a terrible answer to people who are exploitative and completely resistant to reform and just want to harm others. Like they somehow for some reason, get pleasure out of that. Exile is an awful solution, a terrible solution. It's just saying, hey, this we're inconveniencing us. We'd rather they inconvenience somebody out there. Y'all figure out a way to deal with it. So like, I do not see exile as a good solution to serious problems. Now maybe every great once in a while, for example, if you have two federations that have just like completely incompatible values, or they don't want to agree to the same charter or whatever, then maybe it's not exile, but disassociation. But exile, and another problem with exile is we don't live in village communities in ancient societies. We live in modern society where the fuck are they being exiled to? You know, like they're being exiled to where? The forest. And then it's like, oh, but like, okay, but isn't that forest also part of a different group? Like, isn't a different group maybe staying there? I don't know. Just exile does not seem like a good solution to me. And these are some of my problems with it. This is why that I feel that you have to have like an actual restorative or transformative justice system, which requires people to be able to have calm, reflective, patient, kind interactions, even after harm has been done. And I know that's very difficult, but it's imperative. It has to happen. Mike, working for, can't read the whole thing, but Mike donated $5 and said, what do you think of the concept of vulture capitalism as Grace Blakely has popularized? I'm not familiar. I mean, I've heard this term before, but I don't know if it's like associated with some like particular theme. I mean, I think I can infer from the word vulture what's going on here. But I don't know the specifics well enough. I'm sorry you donated $5, but I don't know the specifics well enough to kind of hold a strong opinion about it. I mean, it's for sure that capitalism acts like a vulture on the creativity of the people. That's for sure. But see, now I'm over here inserting my own understanding of this metaphor of vultures, so. Melkor says, I've heard them say we should just have an island where we can exile criminals to, which sounds like we are just inventing anarchist Australia. Yeah, another thing I've mentioned to people before is like, okay, so you're completely against detainment, but you're okay with exiling somebody into an area they can't leave in like the wilderness or something. I'm not sure that you realize that doesn't have as big of a meaningful difference as you think it might, you know? It's like, no, we don't believe in prison, but you're being exiled to that forest. You must stay within these 3 square miles. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We're doing good things over here. Vulture capitalism equals state plus corporate control. Think too big to jail. Yeah, I mean, I don't know her theory well enough to know the specifics, but I will just say that that's just what capitalism is. You know, state plus corporate control is capitalism. And the more that they collude together and that all the hierarchies of power collude together, the more you just get fascism. So I don't know what is meant specifically just by vulture capitalism that's any different from capitalism regularly. You know, maybe non-social democratic capitalism. I'm not sure. I'd need, yeah. Somebody said, Anark, are you a platformist anarchist or do you believe in a synthesist form of anarchism? If between the two, I'm more platformist. Specifically, I believe in an offshoot of platformism called especifismo. So if you want to learn more about especifismo, you should go read Social Anarchism and Organization by Farge, F-A-R-J. But people are right to say that between those two, I'm much more like a platformist. Blue Balon says, how are anarchists dealing with the prospect of artificial superintelligence? I haven't seen any anarchists talking about it yet. It seems pretty damn important. Yeah, I think the thing is that in our communities right now, we sort of have like a homogenizing view that just says AI bad, and then that's the end of the discussion, which isn't really healthy because, you know, I'll put it this way. You know, I totally get why people would be like Butlerian jihadists or whatever. It's the same logic as the Luddites, okay? But I just want to point out that the Luddites didn't stop the you know, looms or the steam looms from being put into place. That ultimately didn't work. Okay. Maybe it worked for a little while, but it didn't ultimately work. The same thing is going to be true. Wherever LLMs end up finding a use, they're going to get used. Like, that's just the truth. Now, a lot of the places they're being used, they're not going to work. But then the question is like, okay, so how are we going to live in the world where the LLMs do exist? And what is a rational way for them to be limited, for them to be integrated in without doing damage? And I think that right now it's really hard to see what that answer is going to be, because right now the majority of LLM the consequences of LLM are very negative consequences, right? The damage that they're doing to artists, the damage that they're doing to students who aren't even learning how to write essays, nor read them. They just get the LLM to summarize the essays. The damage that they can do to infrastructure. In China, for example, they had an LLM that shipped a solution to one of their engineers, and the engineer used the solution, and their whole system like went down for, I don't remember how long, hours or maybe a day or something like that. That stuff is negative. That stuff, there are some obvious negative outcomes to LLMs as they're currently being used, but I don't hold this position where I'm not a Luddite. I'm not a Butlerian jihadist. I recognize that even if the role of LLMs contracts after the bubble pops, they're not going anywhere. So then the question is what does it look like for them to be integrated in a healthy way? And that conversation needs to start being had. Maddie says, see the new Epstein files? I haven't seen like in depth, but I've seen that they confirm that Trump was had got a blowjob from a young girl. Didn't see the age, but also I think because I had already heard the stuff about Sasha Riley, that it seemed like a little bit less of a bombshell. But I haven't heard about all the details of the situation yet. If the stuff about Sasha Riley is true, we are going to learn so much more. That is less than the tip of the iceberg. That's a snowflake from an iceberg out in the ocean. Like it's going to get much darker if that stuff is in the Epstein files. Flinner says, are you surprised Chomsky was involved with Epstein? Legitimately, yes. Yeah, no, I was surprised. And, the first thing we understood was that, Chomsky, he said he had dinner with Epstein. To which I say, the time he said he had dinner with Epstein was already known to be a serial abuser. That stuff had already come out. Chomsky has no excuse, okay? So then Chomsky says, I only kept talking with him for financial advice. That does not absolve you, Noam. That does not absolve you. That's not better. It's not better. Yeah, no, I kept talking with the pedophile sex trafficker because he gave me good financial advice. Bro, how can that be your fucking defense? How is that your defense? And then he also gets angry at people like policing his personal life. It's like, man, this wasn't just like some, fascist from your childhood or something that you knew still and talked with, like some old childhood friend or like an acquaintance in academia. This was Jeffrey Epstein, bro. You can't wring your hands about people analyzing your relation with Jeffrey fucking Epstein. That's insane, bro. What's wrong with you? And then what was the other thing? There's one more thing. Oh, yeah. And we have pictures of Chomsky meeting with Steve Bannon? Bro, what? That should be like your sworn enemy. Steve Bannon and Noam Chomsky, there should never be a picture of the two laughing and shaking hands, but there is. I got to tell you. Yeah, exactly. Somebody like hugging her. I think he's like shaking hands or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's insane. That Chomsky is close with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is like one of the masterminds of Trump's fascistic, dictatorial regime. That's fucking wild, bro. Like, what? You could never catch me shaking hands and laughing with a fascist. Like, it would only be before I found out. No, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah. Yeah. That was super, super disappointing, to be honest. He, The thing is that Chomsky was important to me early in my journey. Like when I was first starting, I was inspired by manufacturing consent, and Chomsky was a very persuasive and charismatic speaker. And I never would have thought this is where he would go in 1,000 years. And the fact that he was like really prickly and defensive about it instead of just admitting it was the wrong thing and that he made a bad judgment, like, man, just disappointing. And at this point, no excuse, really. He has no excuse after all of it. Yeah. Don't know what to say about that. That's dark stuff. Dark stuff. But, this is why anarchists don't worship singular figures. This is why anarchists don't spend all their time just talking about one person. They talk about the ideas. And I want to encourage you, just like everybody, like anarchists should, to absorb the ideas, to make sure that you're not just worshiping a single figure, because that's unhealthy. That's not going to lead to a good place. And furthermore, everybody will disappoint you on a long enough timeline. Like, if you know anybody for long enough, they'll disappoint you. Now, maybe not at the scale of Noam Chomsky and the Jeffrey Epstein shit. I think that's like a special level of like betrayal. But it's good to disattach your theoretical structure from individuals and to instead, use it more as an analytical structure, kind of like mathematicians or scientists do in a general sense. Trying to take the theory, apply it to the world, and let the world tell you whether it's true. And the person who told you the thing, not relevant. Nazis developed these V2 rockets that were extremely, extremely effective and ended up being utilized by many other countries, the technology utilized by other countries. We didn't say like, oh, you can't use V2 rockets because they're Nazi rockets, but like, that's why it's important to develop the theoretical knowledge disconnected from a person. And Chomsky really, I think, demonstrates that. And I will say, Jackalope says, Anark has yet to disappoint. All hail Anark. Okay, see, now this is, if this were a movie, that would be a bad omen. But like, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Okay, so for Chomsky, manufacturing consent, valuable. Manufacturing consent is a good concept. The book holds up. The documentary holds up. It's very valuable for introducing people to anarchism or really to broad social critique, leftist social critique. Unfortunately, it's sullied now. I don't really find myself wanting to be like, go watch Manufacturing Consent. I don't even want people to get attached so that they can be disappointed. Hyper Nemo says, do you think modern platformists revere Machno too much? Personally, I don't see the problem. I'm not opposed to revering genuinely revolutionary thinkers and leaders, but still, I don't think it's bad to revere a person. I think it's bad to hold them up so high that everything is riding on the person, right? It's like he was like a genuinely very inspiring figure. I'm not saying that you can't admire people. Like, it's not bad to admire people. Like, Machno was a very admirable person. Malatesta was a very admirable person. I'm just trying to get the point across that it shouldn't all be riding on the person. It's not about the person. It's about their ideas. It's about their actions, right? And we should be trying to figure out how we can emulate those ideas and spread those ideas to more people and get more people to act in that way. I think that's the emphasis I'm trying to get across here. It's a culture jamming rhizome. Don't love the theorist. Love the socioeconomic model. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Long Defiant says, I was wondering what turned Chomsky into a vote blue no matter who liberal. I mean, I guess that could have had something to do with it. I will say, all this being said, the only thing that I will say in Chomsky's defense, because all that stuff is pretty damning, is that we don't have any evidence he was involved in any of the sex stuff. There was no evidence he was involved in like the pedophile sex trafficking or even knew about really the depth of it. So I want to say that at minimum, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that other stuff I mentioned is too much. Too much. So I do still have energy, but I am getting kind of hungry. So I might end it here in the next hour or so. So many people have asked me about communization theory today. I wonder why. Freestyle skate. Yep. I drink a gallon a day, every single day. Good for my body and brain. Cooking stream. Unfortunately, I need groceries. I'd consider it, but unfortunately as well, my camera is on a mount that is clamped to my desk. But soon, I made a proposition to Means TV that if they would buy me a bunch of like camera equipment that I could use, that I would give them 3 exclusive videos for Means TV. And so that'll be going through soon. And as soon as I have the money, I'll be buying equipment so that I can actually like move my camera around to different places and film other than just my desk here. So yeah, no, they hooked me up. Super happy about it. Dusty Hendricks says, what do you make of the, excuse me, of the economic calculation argument, or problem is what it should be? Do you think commodity production is more desirable for things like consumer goods, or should we aim for a fully planned economy? I don't think the economic calculation problem is real strictly. I think that it is just a lack of computing power. It comes down to us not having the tools to do the information gathering that's needed. Commodity production is good at revealed preference rather than stated preference. So planning is really good for stated preference. That is to say, when somebody tells you what they want. Revealed preference is when somebody shows you what they want rather than tells you. And sometimes revealed preference doesn't match stated preference. And so sometimes commodity production can be good for that because people will reveal their preference by buying it. But the problem is that revealed preference, it's hard to judge commodity consumption as being about revealed preference when they don't necessarily have the option to consume the thing they might want. Like, it's possible that if they had their stated preference, they would consume that. So it's good for that, but I don't think that that's also unachievable in a planned system. You know, if a person, think about it this way. If I can just go to a big database and be like, oh, I want one of those and 2 of those and 3 of those, and I have all this stuff to choose from and I just get to choose. What is really the difference between that and me going to a supermarket and choosing off of the shelf? I would argue basically nothing. Both of them can give you revealed preference. And in that sense, I don't think that there's a huge gap here. Now, commodity production is I guess you might say, a decentralized way of processing. Because there is this algorithm, the profit algorithm at all sectors, then this helps things be processed decentrally throughout the economy. That part, I don't dispute. It's a fact. However, the question is really, is that the most efficient form of calculating all of everyone's economic needs? And as a communist, I would say, no, it's not. It just absolutely isn't. People being able to choose among all of the possible things that they could consume and the things that they need, and being enabled to carry out all of their passions, is a superior way to run society than people being locked or consumption being locked behind the gatekeeping of capital. I don't know if that rant was too crunchy or I used too much jargon, but that's my perspective on that. I don't think the economic calculation problem is a real problem. I think that it comes down to lack of processing power. Revealed preference sounds like quasi-ANCAP hogwash. I mean, we've done studies. There is a difference between revealed preference and stated preference. You can put people in front of options, and studies have demonstrated that sometimes people's stated preference doesn't match their revealed preferences. But I do think that they overplay it a little bit because they feel like it's the strength of commodity production. Yeah, some people just, yeah, as CC Femboy says, it's just that what people don't know, people don't always know what they prefer. Material conditions of preference. People will prefer new things when they're offered. People are really uncreative with products. Yeah, a lot of the time people don't know what they want until it is shown to them. With like, you know, before they see a lineup of 7 things, you ask them what they want, and then you show them the 7 things and they realize, oh, I didn't even realize this one was an option, and they choose something different, right? So there's a mismatch between revealed and stated preference, which isn't about commodities doing, you know, being good at revealed preference. It's instead just that people sometimes have to know what the options are before they would be able to make a correct stated preference. The stated preference and revealed preference would probably match if they were shown their options, is what I should say. Klutari says, oh, it's still going? Yeah, it's still going. Might end here in the next hour or so, but yeah. Oh, looks like I caught up with the chat here. Incredible stuff. Anarcho Crow asks, "What are your favorite music genres?" I think over the last few years, I've listened to a lot of post-punk, like Proto Martyr, Parquet Courts. I was a big fan of those for several years. I haven't listened to them for a little while now. I like a lot of different music. You know, I think most modern people listen to a lot of different kinds of music. Millennials listen to a lot of different music. I've been going back and listening to a lot of music from when I was younger lately, listening to the Mars Volta, System of a Down, for example. But yeah, no, I mean, I still like a lot of like indie rock from when I was young and like indie electronica. I introduced a couple people to Justice's Cross album the other day. Crystal Castles, I just introduced somebody to. So I've been kind of on a kick where I'm going back and recovering and like trying to listen to some of the old stuff that I used to listen to when I was younger, and most of it holds up pretty good. I was listening to, what's her name? Jessie Reyez, I think, recently. I really liked like the era of like SZA and Frank Ocean when they were just like putting out bangers. Like those albums were incredible. And then like, that's why I was listening to Jessie Reyez. She kind of reminded me of SZA a little bit. Big fan. Yeah. Somebody says, I'm getting ready for the Stomp Clap Hey revival. It's coming anytime. Okay. These things are all going in cycles. I don't think a lot of people know that indie music is on its way back right now. We're currently witnessing its slow rise once again. Indie fashion is coming back. That's how you know. The fashion is going to come back with the music. So like we just went through like the 90s and early 2000s kind of era that the millennials experienced. And so that's why we got a bunch of bubblegum pop there for a little while. And what we're about to see is probably an ascendance of like metal, indie rock music, indie hip hop music. And I hope it ends up being anything as good as what the millennials got to experience in like the 2000s and early 2000 teens and all that, because those were like idyllic Renaissance level era of music being introduced at that time. All people need to do, people just need, you want to bring about the indie era all over again. Just start listening to like Death Cab for Cutie, go listen to the Photo album or Transatlanticism, and you'll like summon the spirit of all of the hipsters again, and we'll like return from the afterlife. Yeah, no, it's that music will, I think, probably will come back, and I hope that we get a new resurgence of it rather than just a rediscovery of the old stuff. Even though I would be excited for that to happen. I hope we get a new wave of indie rock and indie rap and all that, because it was so beautiful. That era was so beautiful. There was just incredible stuff. Like, it was like genre mixing all the time, just complete freedom. People did whatever they wanted basically. And it was fantastic. Big fan of that era. I like the Proto Men, big fan. I like the Proto Men mostly because when I was young, when I was a little kid, I was a Mega Man nerd. I loved Mega Man, and I still love Mega Man. Mega Man's awesome. But like, yeah, when I was young, Mega Man was my shit. And I was into Mega Man for so many years. I beat like the first 16 games of the Mega Man series. I played like every Mega Man as it came out, including like the ones that the redos they did in the old NES style that was like 10, 11, and 12. I played all those. I played like Japanese ROM hacks and shit of like Mega Man games when I was young. So, yeah, big fan. Proto Men is really cool. I loved part 1. I loved part 2. And then you said, have I listened to Act 3 yet? No, not yet. The only part I heard sounded like it was kind of like, so like, okay, you know, on Act 2, there was like a few songs that were more like kind of these like 80s hair rock songs. Well, those are my least favorite songs on Act 2. And the only song I've heard from Act 3 sounds like it's kind of more of that like 80s hair rock sound. And I hope the whole album is not like that. So. Somebody said new wave post rock. Oh yeah, people used to love like Lift Your, or what is a Godspeed You Black Emperor and stuff like that. People loved that stuff. I loved the musicianship, but I felt like I wanted vocals. Maybe I should give it another try these days. Dream Theater. Oh, I loved Dream Theater. Scenes from a Memory was an incredible album. Yeah, like, was it Scenes? It's like Dream Theater, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory or something. That album is a masterpiece. I revisited it and it is still so good. Melkor donated $5. They said, have you read R. Scott I don't know if that's Backer or Baker. Would recommend. Also, top 5 fantasy series. I don't know. I've never even thought about ranking top 5 fantasy series. I would say probably my favorite fantasy ever is Lord of the Rings. I think that it utterly stood the test of time. I think that it's going to be really hard for anybody to ever beat Lord of the Rings. You know, like Lord of the Rings is legendary. It's truly incredible because it encompasses so much of like the human condition and what it is to struggle for good against evil, especially in a time right now. Feels like, you know, we got our own Sauron at the head of our nation, right? Like it's a bad spot, but I feel like Lord of the Rings is very inspiring. It offers the kind of spirit that's going to be needed to persevere through these times. Number 2, what did I say? Number 2, you know, I feel like it's Game of Thrones. I'm just kind of sad the television show got ruined, but Game of Thrones, phenomenal. Oh, it'll probably be Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI, which was 3 here in the United States. Game of Thrones is phenomenal. Huge fan. Those are the only 3 that are coming to mind, though. And then, you know, I make my own fantasy mythos. I write my own fantasy mythos called Nira. And I'll link everybody to it. Everybody wants to go. I am a creator of a tabletop game called Nira. I've been creating it since I was 15 years old. Me and my friends have been play testing it for decades. And it's a dark fantasy world. At some point when it's like complete or almost complete, I will probably, I will probably like pitch it here on the YouTube channel, being like, hey, little did you know, I play tabletop games and I've been making this one ever since I was 15, blah, 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 blah. And I'll probably make a video like pitching it like that. At a certain point, I might make a YouTube just for Nira. We play it every single Tuesday, or rather, we've been playing Magic the Gathering, been playing a lot of Commander lately, but we've played years of Nira at this point. And it's very well polished. If anybody wants to run a campaign on their own and give me feedback, that would be phenomenal, to be honest. Anyway, yeah, but I think that's what comes to mind. I'm sure there's some stuff I'm leaving out as far as fantasy goes. Yeah, I can't think of what nothing's immediately coming to mind. I mean, a Final Fantasy VII, I guess, is also a fantasy world. Big fan of Final Fantasy VII. Chrono Trigger, big fan of the Chrono Trigger world. But yeah, I'm not like I consume fantasy, but it's not like I consume a lot of fantasy. Oh yeah, I love Dune. Dune is incredible. That was actually one of the things I fell in love with when I was young, like late teens, early 20s. Read like the first 3 Dune books in close succession, and then read a little bit later I read the 4th one. Long Defiant says LLMs as dungeon masters. Yeah, that seems like a mostly harmless thing to do. I mean, if you don't have anybody that wants to play GM in your group, an LLM could be your GM. But I got to say, it's probably not going to be very creative. I wouldn't want it to become the standard. I think that would probably be an overall negative thing, because then you would take out the human element of the GM, and I think the human element of the GM is important. But I think there are tons of play groups that can't find a GM, and it's understandable if that's something you wanted to do. But I do think you're going to get overall probably a little bit worse experience than if you had a real experienced GM doing the job. Jackie Daytona says, sending love and respect to Anark and the chat. Well, I'm glad to have you here. We probably won't be going for too much longer. I'm kind of getting hungry, but yeah, no, it's been a good one. Oh my God, is it saying it's going to snow tonight? Give me a sec. Wow. Yeah, it's possible it's about to snow. Not good. Dusty Hendricks, you said stop. Conservatives are going to steal that. What are they? Oh no! Oh, Sauron, Mom Donnie. Oh my God, no! We're going to pretend that never happened. Pepe Sylvia says, isn't Lord of the Rings also a bit fascist? I don't know if I would characterize it as fascist. I understand how somebody might say that, given that, you know, Tolkien was an avowed monarchist, so it's understandable how someone would think that. But Tolkien, I think, kind of had a contradictory viewpoint of the world. The way he looked at it was, he was a monarchist if there was a benevolent king, but in place of a benevolent king, he thought the whole world should basically be like the hobbits. Like, if you look at the ethic, the ethos of Lord of the Rings, the people he holds to have the highest ethos are basically like the hobbits. Okay. These people have the highest ethic, even though perhaps they have not risen to the circumstance because they live simple lives, humble lives. They are considered being kind of closest to the God, Iluvatar in this world, insofar as that they are blessed and they live this wonderful life and it's very idyllic. That is considered like our best way to live that is shown to us in the Lord of the Rings mythos is essentially the way that the hobbits live. And I feel like that the hobbits don't have a hierarchical society. It's very informal. It's very decentralized. There is some concentration of power here and there, but like the hobbits closely match the way that Tolkien views an ethical society. So Yeah, Tolkien was super weird politically, as somebody said. Tolkien, as Crow says, Tolkien was a monarchist. He believed monarchs had a distinct moral quality. Maybe not all monarchs, but he did believe that the benefit of a monarch was that if they had a distinct moral quality, that was preferable. But he also was staunchly anti-war because it destroys culture and language. Yeah, it's a big part of it. Absolutely anti-war. But, he also still believed in just wars. So weird guy politically, definitely has a very odd view of the world. But then also look at the ring as a metaphor. He's saying that the lust for power is bad. I mean, that's like the underlying political ethos of Lord of the Rings is that the lust for power is corrupting and destructive, and that it links you to that universe is Satan. Okay. Lust for power is satanic in the Lord of the Rings mythos, in Tolkien's mythos. So it's like, it's weird. He's got a weird view. He's got a weird view for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody's basically saying the same thing. Yeah, bro had a weird view. He actually literally called himself an anarchist in one of his letters. Let's see here. Tolkien. I'll find it. This always entertains people because it's so weird. Okay, he sent this to his son, Christopher Tolkien. Oh, okay, there we go. He says, my political opinions lean more and more to anarchy, philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control, not whiskered men with bombs. I'd like to note here, he says philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control. That is that's actually a pretty decent understanding of anarchism or anarchy. He said, or to unconstitutional monarchy. What? This guy, what? Oh my God. And one of the weirdest sentences ever written, probably. He says, I would arrest anybody who uses the word state in any sense other than the inanimate realm of England and its inhabitants, a thing that has neither power, rights, nor mind. And after a chance of recantation, execute them if they remain obstinate. So he's anti-statist, but not when it's a monarch? I'm so confused, Tolkien. What the fuck are you talking about, bro? What? Bizarre. Bro's like, now listen, I'm basically an anarchist, or I believe in monarchy, and I would execute anybody who believes in the state. So, what? Bizarre. Yeah. If we could get back to personal names, it would do a lot of good. Government is an abstract noun, meaning the and process of governing, and it should be an offense to write it with a capital G or so as to refer to people. You see, though, like that's very anarchist, you know? If people were in the habit of referring to King George's council, Winston and his gang, it would go a long way to clearing thought and reducing the frightful landslide into theocracy. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, anyway, the proper study of man is anything but man, and the most improper job of any man, even saints, who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other men. Not 1 in a million is fit for it, and least of all those who seek the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty anarchist, you know? It's just weird that it's got... or a monarchist. It's like, what? What? You're wild, bro. What's happening here? Somebody, yeah. Woe Gets Mara says, wait, was Tolkien the only unironic anarcho-monarchist? Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, he's an asterisk anarchist. Like, I don't know if I would call him an anarchist. I never tell people he was. I mean, every once in a while, if I'm just trying to fuck with right-wingers, I'll tell them he was an anarchist. But, like, I don't know, really weird, because it suggests in that letter that he actually does have kind of an understanding of like the problems that anarchism points out. But then for some reason, somehow, he believes that there's such a thing as like a benevolent monarch. Wow. He's British. What can I say? Anarcho Crow says, I still love so much that when Sam had the ring, he just imagined himself as the greatest gardener in the world. Yes, that's so wholesome. And I love as well that he had that wholesome vision, and yet he still did not give in to that vision. He's like, oh, this wouldn't be so bad. Nah, bro still had the strength of heart to give it back. Melkor says, some left Carlists I've talked to also have weird synthesis of anarchism and monarchy. They think a state is illegitimate, but a monarch is ordained by God and tradition. What the... And this, yeah, baffling. Baffling. This is why that class consciousness does not come about naturally, people. People think all kinds of crazy stuff. You leave them to their own devices without, like, a process of feedback and theory and education and, reflection and all of that. And who knows what ideas that the masses will come to. It's really not the case that they are just going to come to, socialist class consciousness organically. Nira Lush says, do you have any reading recommendations for a reimagining of education? I'm in the middle of Ivan Illich's Deschooling Society right now. I think it's, Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Loved that. It is so good. It is just full of banger quotes from beginning to end. I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't read it. Anarcho Crow says, Sam is the true hero of the story, unironically. Yeah, no, I mean, he definitely is. I think people don't give Frodo his credit because, but Frodo had to carry the ring. That's rough, for Frodo not to have become worse by the end is exceptional. Anybody probably would have been corrupted by it. And Frodo managed to get it all the way there. And that's pretty incredible. Frodo is very pure of heart. Crow says, on another note, have you read Einstein's writing about socialism? Would you regard him as leaning more libertarian or authoritarian? I got to be honest, having reread that essay a few times, it's kind of unclear. At some points, it seems like he is actually a libertarian socialist, but then he also kind of says some praising things of Stalin, or maybe he's just making exceptions or defenses of Stalin. I've heard other people kind of mention that at the point he wrote that letter, really most people didn't know how bad that Stalin's USSR was, or that how much betrayal of the workers had already happened in the USSR. So it's not clear if Einstein had known all the details, if he would have supported all that. But I think from the tone of that letter, he leans more towards a libertarian socialism, or maybe you might say just like a democratic socialism. It's kind of maybe somewhere in between those two, but also back in the day, most people just tended towards a more libertarian socialism by default. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to discern. I've reread it numerous times being this time I'm going to really lock down my take. And then I'm I don't know, there's some, kind of contradictory impulses. It's well argued, but yeah. Anyway. I think we're coming around to the end of the live stream. Before we get off here, I just want to remind everybody, I actually have a bunch of copies of A Modern Anarchism in single parts. I just got a whole bunch in the mail. Here is part 1 and part 2 and part 3 and part 4. And I got copies of each of these. Each one is $10. So if that sounds like, a good price to you, you should reach out to me in DMs, like on Instagram or Twitter or on Discord if you're on there. Right now, I'm having a hard time kind of like financially because a lot of my odd jobs have kind of dried up when I expected them to come back. The economy is not very good. So this is a way you can help me out. Or if you want to, you can go to my Patreon and become a patron. That is a great way to help me out. My Patreon is the reason why I can continue doing this channel as everything changes in my life. Becoming a patron is the number one way to make sure that I can continue doing this. So if you really want to do me a solid, please go become a patron at my Patreon, and I'll link it real quick just for everybody there in the chat. It's a huge boon that I can rely on the Patreon. So please go become a patron for any amount that you can afford. Also, if you want to go over to Means TV and become a subscriber to Means TV, down in the description is an affiliate code, and it'll give you like 20% off. And I will actually get a little bit of the cut of your subscription per month. And so that's another way you can support me, as well as getting access to essentially a socialist worker cooperative platform. So that's a good way to support me. I think that is about it. I appreciate everybody who donated on stream today. I didn't take the time to kind of see where I was at, but I think that it, was significant. So I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Also, if you want to, I just want to point people to the last video I did that was about Cooperation Tulsa in the year 2025. That video took a lot of effort, and I was it was like a labor of love, and it didn't do so great in the algorithm. So anybody who didn't get to watch the video, go watch the video. It's a really good video. Talk to you about Cooperation Tulsa and how far we've come. 2025 was like a very, very productive year. There's so much stuff that went into it. I was blown away when I started putting all the clips together, how much stuff that had happened in the year of 2025. So hopefully we're going to knock that out of the park this year. But yeah, go watch the Cooperation Tulsa video. I'm in the process of making all kinds of new videos as we speak. So stay tuned in. I'm super glad we got time to talk today, and I'll see y'all next time.